I want you folks who have an affinity for vintage video games of decades past to take a moment to really appreciate how good we have it these days. This day and age when once long forgotten arcade classics are brought back into the fold for a new audience to enjoy without having to resort to seemingly seedier methodology such as it is. Things like, keeping in theme, the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. A beloved title of gaming enthusiasts of an older stock, once thought to have been lost to the annals of licensed purgatory, and you could play it via the Cowabunga collection in all its glory without compromise in the comfort of your own home. Wasn't always like this, however. Back in the day, if you wanted arcade hits at home, you had to resort to conversions for the home consoles that didn't quite measure up. In the case of the Turtles arcade game, it was a hidden feature in the TMNT2 Battle Nexus game for PS2 that had all the music stripped away and replaced with a couple generic tracks, one of which you're actually listening to right now. And going further back, you had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, a game that was less a straight arcade port and more of a remixed version more suited for the limited hardware. For what it was fine, but it was a mere imitation of the thing you really wanted to play. It was also, however, the best option you had to get in the TMNT arcade experience at home, because you sure weren't going to get it from today's subject matter, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the arcade game for MS-DOS from Konami and Probe, released in 1992. See, the PC Master Race wasn't always the PC Master Race, where they had quality titles that you couldn't quite replicate on the console side of things. There was a time when PC would get ports of arcade and console titles that were less than stellar, to put it mildly. There were games like Castlevania and Mega Man that were playable to a degree but not quite ideal, while you had ports of games like Street Fighter II that were the less said the better. And then you had TMNT, the arcade game on MS-DOS. Now there were other computer ports for other computer formats of the day, Commodore 64, Atari ST, Amiga among others, all of them derivatives or similar to this DOS port, and I will not mince words here, this is the drizzling fucking shits. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because there's not much to say here. It's a straight port of the arcade game, no extra stages, gimmicks, or what have you. Whatever you saw in the arcade game is in here, kinda, sort of. It does not, however, play as well, if at all. Your controls comprised 4 directional keys and an action button. Have a gamepad or joystick with more than one button? Tough shit, doesn't matter. You only use one button, and to jump you have to press the action button while holding upwards to do an awkward looking jump kick that doesn't actually hurt anyone. Control in general is sometimes responsive while other times it's not. Collision detection likewise sometimes works while in other times it works against you. Scratch that, most of the time it works against you. Especially against large clutters of foot soldiers or Mousers or whatever who will beat you mercilessly and drain you of your 3 lives in seconds flat. And indeed you start with 3 lives, though they're not lives in the traditional sense but rather they're more like extra hit points. Collecting pizza pies will restore some health as well as grant you an extra life, which is one saving grace in this game or a means to extend the misery further. You also have 5 continues, and whenever you lose all your lives you can continue where you left off until you run out of continues. That functionality works at least, but nothing else in this game seems to. And then you have moments like this where for what it's worth, the game at least looks good, at least in still imagery. The DOS version does a fine enough job of replicating the overall graphics and appearance of the arcade original, with only a minor dip in quality. Some of the larger bosses see a reduction in size, and some cutscenes are either missing turtles or featuring the wrong one, but other than that, it's fine. The real issue lies in the animation. It's choppier than a chop fest, and it looks dreadful in motion, which also detracts from the overall quality of play. As for sound, you only have one music track that plays in the beginning, and it's awful. For some reason, there's no music during actual gameplay, and you're left with equally abysmal PC speaker noise sound effects or ad-lib equivalents to violently violate your eardrums. There is no beating around the bush when it comes to stating the obvious in regards to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game for MS-DOS. This is an awful port of a beloved arcade title. It might look halfway decent, but it runs like trash and plays even worse. An irredeemably dreadful piece of code that isn't worth anyone's time. And tomorrow we're playing Revenge. Long overdue.